trying to put the game away. He does! Down goes the defender. Soloniak fires! Scores!
Hello and welcome on in. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by the Private Bank, the official bank of your Chicago Fire. Fred Hubner along with Paul Tenorio, Frank Klopas. We are live at the Heineken Pub 97 right here as we are each and every week. By the way, just a reminder, we're back to Wednesdays, at least next week, back to a Wednesday broadcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And heck, you got to be tuning in. The Chicago Fire keep the roll going. Unbeaten now in 7 games after a nice 2-0 win over Atlanta. A little bit of payback against Atlanta United.
I agree with you. And listen, it's a great time to be a soccer fan here in Chicago. First of all, Fred and Paul, we know how exciting it is to be watching our team here in Chicago, but also I think for me, and you see what I'm wearing on, I got to go back old school. I mean, a great result with the national team. I think 4 points out of the 2 games and a huge result, I think, in Mexico and Azteca. Never easy. So I was cleaning some stuff out. I ran into this old jersey, and I said, I got to put it on and represent our national team. And I don't even think Paul was born when I was playing with this jersey on.
I was about 4 years old when you wore that jersey in 1989, Frank. And you know what? That's Frank's favorite USA jersey because it's blue and white. So he felt like it was Greek and American. That's why he put that one on.
Great result. Look, the U.S. got a great result. And then obviously, so did Greece. They tied Bosnia.
Most importantly, Frank didn't go buy that at a store. It actually still fits him, but we have photographic evidence of this jersey that he wore back in there. He is back in the day. You know what? This photo doesn't show it, man, but I saw the full photo. You had the big quads. You were ready to go, man.
Well, listen, that's what I was telling the guys here. I said, you got to show, the full effects of the picture, man. I mean, it does it injustice, Fred was saying about how my waist was so nice and slim. I think,
Hey, listen, you're still fitting in the jersey. That's more than a lot of us can say.
No, there's no doubt about it.
Back in the day,
I can't tell you how many jerseys I got at home that don't fit. But the Chicago Fire, a big win. They take on Atlanta United. 4-0 earlier, 4-0, 4-1 down in Atlanta, and some payback. And the Chicago Fire didn't play their best game, but they came away with a victory, and that's what counts.
Yeah, and then we talked about, obviously the first game down there, things changed with the red card. I think, different team, from what we saw that initial first game. But I felt, you're right. You can look at it and you say maybe in possession, it was one of these games where you can look at it and you say, because the past games they were able to dominate, games through possession. But I still felt, I think other than early in the game, Paul, with Atlanta had a couple chances, the Fire should have put this game away. I mean, the opportunities they had even in the start of the second half, and they looked very dangerous throughout the game. I always felt like the one mistake, I think that the Fire were in transition and, chances the other way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think early on, the first 20 minutes or so, I thought Atlanta was probably really happy with the way that the game was playing out. And then the Fire made some adjustments on the field that I thought worked really well. Schweinsteiger started to drop deeper in between the center backs, and all of a sudden it became kind of a back three, and the wing back started to get a little bit higher. And what that did, I thought it did 2 things. One, it ate up that space centrally and made it very difficult to play through the lines the way they like to play. But then I thought it also provided a little bit more, width, obviously, but with those fullbacks getting higher, all of a sudden Greg Garza was under a little bit more pressure. Mears was under a little bit more pressure, and it created more numbers in midfield as well. And the Fire started to get a hold of the game. And then I thought really what we saw was Atlanta has had this problem all year long where they get too stretched. Like what we used to see the first 3 games of the season for the Fire, where there was a disconnect between the forward line and the back line and a lot of space to play in between. And the back line for Atlanta started to come higher to try to close that gap, and it opened up a lot of space in behind, and we saw David Acon break through several times. They were able to just get 1 goal out of it, but the opportunities were there all game long.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights from the contest as the Fire and Atlanta United met this past weekend at Toyota Park. A really nice afternoon. Early on, Atlanta had an opportunity to score.
Yeah, well, this is that early chance. I think the Fire tried to step up, and then Villalba got behind. And, anytime you're on the road and you get a couple opportunities like this, and, if you don't put those away, I think it becomes extremely difficult.
Different game if that one goes into the net. Here you see the great pass, Akam onside. You think he's going to put it in, but no, and he waits. Perfect pass to an oncoming Soloniak, who puts it in the net.
Great composure there, Paul, by Akam. But again, I think just you look at it, and I mean, if you don't put chances away and just one opportunity, I think that Parker's comes, I don't think it was a foul. And then, Schweinsteiger with one pass, with that back line that Paul was talking about, the Fire get behind, and then they score.
Numerous opportunities and chances. Here's another one.
Well, this is the handball on Mears. Obviously you failed to clear that first one, and the ball bounces. Anything can happen, and for Nikolic from there is not going to miss.
Kind of strange they didn't blow it for the handball until after the shot was missed. But
The
that's a
crazy
whole nother
thing, I don't think this goalie was looking at the last one because he shot it in the same corner where he missed his last PK.
Yes, he did. Another chance.
This is what Frank's talking about. When you have these chances as an away team, you've got to put the shots on frame. A lot of people ask me, they compare Orlando City at the beginning of the year to Atlanta, and they ask me, what's the difference? What's all this hype about? Well, Tito Villalba is about a similar level of player as Carlos Rivas when he came to MLS. There's a difference between Hector Villalba and Miguel Almiron, and I thought on those misses, you see the difference between a $1.5 million player and when Almiron's in the game, an $8.5 million player. You've got to be able to finish those chances if you're Atlanta, but I thought the Fire did very well to respond to that early pressure and get a goal and then close it out with the penalty late. Not a pretty performance, but you've got to win some ugly ones too.
We've got a lot of time to talk about this one as the Chicago Fire get the 2-0 win. Right now they are just 1 point back of Toronto FC in the Eastern Conference standings. We'll talk more about the good things that happened for the Fire against Atlanta this past weekend. We'll do that and much, much more. Don't forget the Fire take to the road as they take on New England this coming weekend. A 6:30 start on Comcast Sportsnet, CSN, a 6 o'clock pregame, and then the Chicago Fire return home. Another game with Orlando City SC Saturday, June 24th, 7:30, presented by Heineken. Get your tickets at chicago-fire.com/tickets. More on the big win over Atlanta. We come back at Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
Heineken tastes perfect every single time, and that doesn't happen by accident. It takes 15 years to become a Heineken brewmaster, almost as long as it took me to master this look.
She came to meet a man. She found an angel. Good, ba-da-ba-shaka. What's his name now? Good, ba-da-ba-shaka.
Still practicing. It takes 15 years to become a Heineken brewmaster. There's more behind the star.
The heat will wear you out real quick. And we've been through some hot ones. It's very physical. You gotta take care of your body and stay hydrated because every moment matters. That's why I drink Advocare Hydrate. I've got a job to do.
John, you're home.
What's going on?
It's this paint. Valspar Reserve. Nothing stays on the wall. Not anything. Not any of these things, John.
Right, Valspar Reserve. Super stain resistant and scrubbable.
And this color, still perfect.
Yeah, looks great, Val. How much coffee have you had?
3 cups. 4.
Valspar Reserve Paint and Primer with Hydrochroma technology. Now the colors you love stay the colors you love. Exclusively at Lowe's.
Welcome back in Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. The Chicago Fire coming off a 2-0 win over Atlanta United. The Fire playing very, very well at home, 7-0-1. They have 6 straight wins. Frank Klopas, Paul Tenorio. And Frank, we talk about it all the time. You played in the league, you coached in the league. Winning at home, protecting home field is huge, and that's exactly what the Fire's been doing, not only this week, but all season long.
No, I agree with you. And, we talked about it. I think that it's so difficult to win on the road because, you look at this last game and then Atlanta, the few chances they had early on, if you don't capitalize on that, it's very difficult, and I think the Fire defensively have been very good. I mean, throughout the game, even though I think with the ball, I think there were a lot of turnovers and maybe they weren't as sharp, but defensively, they were very hard to break down. And then especially when, they scored that goal, and then, Atlanta's got to take more risks. They got to open up a little bit more. And in the end of the day, they had over 60% possession in this game, but it really doesn't matter. Possession away, possession always in front of you. I think the Fire stayed compact. They kept the ball, everything in front of them. And then the more dangerous team was the Fire, because I think they should have put this game away. They should have scored the second. They should have scored the third. They could have scored 4 goals because the chances were there the second half.
I would also say, this is a Fire team that has been good at home, even last year when they weren't a very good team. I remember talking to Michael Bradley after Toronto FC played here, and I think they escaped with like a 1-0 win or maybe 2-1. And talking to Michael Bradley in the locker room afterwards, he goes, look, this is just not a fun place to play. They make it very difficult on you to break them down. And now you have a team that's difficult to break down and is capable of doing something on the attacking end, right? It's a more complete team. But I think it's a credit to the way that they've approached home games, the fact that they've always been very competitive at home, and now you add in the fact that they are more dynamic in the attack, and they're a team that expects to get 3 points every time they step on the field at Toyota Park.
And right after you talked to Bradley, you then took him out on the pitch and showed him how to chip the keeper from midfield, right?
Well, those lessons finally paid off,
Yes, exactly.
The other thing I was going to say that I'm very impressed, and I know it's early on, Paul and Fred, is that this team really has not dipped in form. You see some teams in the league, they go on this runs, 3 or 4 game runs, and then, there's setbacks where they drop a couple games. This team hasn't done that. And then, you look at this Atlanta game, and we're a little bit spoiled now because we're used to this team playing, very good defensive soccer, very organized, very compact, and also very good with the ball. Their ability to kind of dictate the game, be good in possession, and but they haven't dipped in form. And you can look at this last game. Maybe they weren't as good with the ball, but then, their ability and the chances they created, they become a very dangerous team.
Well, and they talked a lot, obviously, during the contest. Almiron didn't come on till late. Same with Martinez. But the Chicago Fire, without Dax McCarty, have come up with 4 points in 2 games.
Yeah, that was huge to be able to get those results without Dax. He's such an important part of what the Fire do. And I think part of the reason why they didn't have as much of the ball against Atlanta was because Dax wasn't there. You now have just one player in Bastian Schweinsteiger who's capable of really playing those passes between the lines from a deep lying spot. That's not Juninho's game. It never has been. He likes to possess the ball. He's a rhythm player, short passing, keep the ball, but he's not going to beat you with that pass between the lines. So what ended up happening was as Schweinsteiger dropped deeper, now you can take away that ball and it becomes a little bit more difficult to play with the rhythms that the Fire like to play with. The fact that they got the result, though, without Dax and on the road in Orlando, yes, it could have been 3 points there as well. Really is a testament to the strengths of this team right now, and the fact that they do have some depth. I think they can improve the depth, but they have enough depth to be able to survive the loss of a player who I think has been their best player this season.
Yeah, and Fred, I think when you knew Atlanta at some point was going to bring in Martinez and Almiron, but at that point they were losing 1-0, so things changed because the Fire could stay compact, which they did. Tactically, they made some very good changes. They bring Campbell in the middle, also as a third center back, because they know now maybe they'll play more service in the box. Juninho comes out. He missed last week because of birth to to his child and stuff like that. So his fitness level maybe with the heat might have been an issue. You bring Polster in, you can stay a little bit more compact. There's no room for Almiron now to get the ball, and for them to be a team that's so good in transition and they're able to combine. They compacted things, made it very difficult centrally, and then they had 3 center backs there to deal with crosses where Atlanta is not a very big team, especially with Martinez being in there, and then the opportunities were there in transition because they were taking all the risk.
Yeah, Vancouver showed that a week or so ago because they don't have a lot of big guys, Atlanta, in the box. 4 players on the team of the week for the Chicago Fire: Nikolic, Akam, Schweinsteiger, and also Jalmyra. One guy not on the list, but he actually had a pretty good game, was Michael Deleu. Completed 15 of 21 passes, 5 ball recoveries, couple of clearances, an interception. He's still waiting. He's getting a couple opportunities, but not putting one in the net.
And I can say, Frank can speak to this better than any of us, but when you're coaching, a big part of being effective as a coach is getting players to buy in. And I think Michael Deleu has bought into a difficult situation. He's a striker playing as a winger, and he understands it means the goals aren't going to be there like they have been in the past. And he's pushing a little bit to try to pressing to get that first goal. But while he wants that goal, he does everything else that you want your winger to do. He plays really strong defensively. He's got good bite. You can count on him for 2 to 3 hard fouls a game, and he's willing to make the hard runs to open spaces for other guys, and you need players like this. Michael DeLue is a targeted allocation money player. He came here to score goals. He's willing to do something different to make it better for the team, and that's important.
Listen, we've talked about him, so much, what he does and what he means to the team. But it's good, I think for him, once he gets that first goal, for him to get a little bit more confidence, because I think as a forward sometimes,
Sure.
When you do all the other things right, but when you're capped, you make a certain amount of money, you're here to make a difference, and a difference in the final third. So I know a little bit of that is playing on his mind. Look, for us, we see the game, and we know how important he is, because all the little things that he does. But I think that, once he gets that first goal, I think he's going to get a little more confidence. I think he's trying a little bit too hard at times right now. And, I think once he gets that, I think, he can overcome that hurdle. And, I think more goals will fall his way.
Yeah, he also comes back. He plays all sides of the ball, comes back, plays defensively. He's always there on balls into the box. So Michael DeLue playing very well. Hopefully that next goal comes, that first goal, and maybe it comes during the week. That's right. We've got a U.S. Open Cup to talk about. We'll do that when we come back. It's Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
Announcing Hyundai's Better Than Ever sales event. Come in now for the biggest savings in our 30-year history on select new Hyundais. Like up to $4,250 total savings on the 2017 Elantra.
Really? Wow.
And every new Hyundai comes with an amazing warranty. America's best warranty. Hurry in before the best offers in Hyundai history are, well, history. Better is the reason to buy Hyundai. Better Than Ever is the reason to buy now. Lease the Elantra for $109 a month or get up to $4,250 in total savings. Visit buyhyundai.com today.
Hi, Russ for U.S. Waterproofing. Looking for a company to repair your home can be stressful. Look to us, as many of your neighbors have, like Mrs. O'Brien in Elmhurst. We sealed cracks in her crawl space. Or Mr. Weber in Orland Park. We installed a battery backup sump pump. And Mr. Kaplan in Northbrook. He needed structural repair after he noticed cracks in his brickwork. We've helped many of your neighbors.
Schedule your free consultation today at uswaterproofing.com. U.S. Waterproofing. A better basement starts with us.
When I finally heard my name called, I think that's when you really realize in some ways your dream has come true.
Chicago takes Jonathan Toews, Winnipeg native, is the 3rd overall pick.
The next captain is Chicago Blackhawks, number 19, Jonathan Toews.
That's where the new chapter, the story of your hockey career is really beginning.
Hey, sports fans, the Bulls Sox Academy, the official youth training facility of the Chicago Bulls and White Sox, is running summer camp in over 50 communities around Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana. These camps are an awesome opportunity for all young fans to learn to play the games the right way, straight from the pros. Besides learning all the fundamentals, each athlete will receive an exclusive stadium tour, have an opportunity to meet current or former players, and much more.
Grozny's restart. The header, Razov, Klopas scores! Frankie Klopas becomes the hometown hero, and the Fire does the double.
Oh, yeah, that was back in the day. He was jumping over the dasher boards and scoring a goal. Frank Klopas, Paul Tenorio, Fred Hubner. We're talking U.S. Open Cup, 4th-round play of the U.S. Open Cup. Getting underway. You look very good there.
I think my hamstring's hurting after watching me jump.
Listen, I don't know that you can jump like that. I introduced Frank to Waze. I think he didn't know where he was going. He jumped over, he jumped back. He didn't know where he wanted to go.
Listen, I was going to run out of the stadium, and I said, my teammates are to my right. Let me jump back and celebrate with them.
There you go. But in the celebration for the U.S. Open Cup, it's always meant something to Chicago Fire soccer team. I mean, winning the double in 98, but 4 times winners in 98, also in 2000, 03, and 06. And this is one team, Frank, that in the history of the team has always taken this as a very important tournament.
Yeah, I think it's a historic tournament. I think when you look at 4 titles, I think the Fire and Seattle have 4 as far as MLS teams, and I think there's one amateur team out in California, Bethlehem Steel, that has 5. So the goal is to overtake that, to be the team with the most titles. And I think this is a tournament that's historic here in Illinois. Paul and I were talking about it before, because before there was. There wasn't soccer here. It's like the amateur teams, the teams that kept the game alive. And, you have amateur teams that have won the Open Cup tournament before. I think that the Eagles, the Falcons, Sparta has won it, the Vikings. So you have these teams that have won this tournament before. And it's a tradition. It's ingrained in the soccer culture here in Illinois. And I think it's great to see that early on, that this Fire team, we took this tournament in a serious way, and I know that they're doing it today also.
I think for me, as somebody who has grown up around the game in Washington, D.C., the appreciation for the history of the sport in this country is a little bit deeper in Chicago because of those amateur teams that won the Open Cup back in the day, and I think it represents the kind of fabric of this city. The fact that those teams were kind of teams divided by their ethnic heritage, and they came over from Poland or from Germany, and they formed teams, and they went on to win the Open Cup. And I think the Fire came along, and part of the responsibility I think of MLS in general is to carry that forward, that legacy forward of the people who played when there wasn't a league, and to keep that alive. And I think taking the Open Cup seriously in Chicago is a part of that, is an idea that you are carrying forward a legacy of your city. And so for me, coming from outside of Chicago, I think it's an important factor of the Fire franchise that they do put a strong team on the field and do try to advance. Regardless of what the results are, that the effort is there to win the trophy.
Does it come at a difficult time? I mean, we're talking about a 7-game unbeaten streak, and now the Fire, they have New England this weekend, but it's a Wednesday midweek game in St. Louis against St. Louis FC. I would expect some roster moves, some roster changes, maybe different lineups out there, but there's guys that have been coming in off the bench and playing well. Probably a perfect time for them to get some more run out there.
Yeah, that's why you have a team, and I think you put a team together and you have to manage all the tournaments, because I think the Fire in this tournament because they want to win, and I think I know they're going to take this in a serious way. Is there going to be some changes? Of course, but I think that they've done a good job now, whether it's guys that you've sent to the USL team to get games. I think opportunity with some of the younger players that have been able to play, substantial minutes, important minutes, and show that they really can contribute. So, look, I know that there might be some changes, but I know that they're really, they're looking at this tournament and they're saying, you know what, it's an opportunity for us to win a cup, and we're going to put our best foot forward to do so.
Before Paul jumps in, I want to ask you, because when you were playing in the tournament, in the U.S. Open Cup, did you have to explain to some of your teammates back then how important this was because you knew a little bit more about the history of it?
You know what? No, because, back then we had, the foreign guys that came with the team, whether it's the Polish guys, Lubos Kubik, or even the American guys, we knew what the tournament meant, how important it was. I went overseas to Europe and I played, and this is a tournament. It's great because everyone can enter and compete. The amateur guys have an opportunity to play with some of the best. So it's one of those things that, it's a fantastic tournament to play, and one that you want to win. So everyone knew the history and what the Open Cup meant.
Yeah, and I would, just to piggyback on what Frank was saying earlier when it comes to the lineup, this is an opportunity for some young guys to get some minutes, and prove themselves. I'll be interested to see the changes that happen. I would like to see Michael DeLue play up top. We talked about him needing to get a goal. This could be a good opportunity to play him in that forward position and get a goal and maybe get over that little bit of a hump. He has been playing a lot of minutes, so maybe he doesn't play, but it could be a chance. But you want guys like Daniel Johnson, Arturo Alvarez, who hasn't got a lot of minutes, to go on and be a featured guy. Drew Connor, Michael Harrington, you need to get them minutes so they stay fresh. So if you do need them in the season, you can lean on them. So I would expect to see a decent amount of squad rotation, but you want to maintain a strong team. And lastly, I'll say this tournament is a lot of fun to watch. If you have a chance, I know all of us at 442 are going to be out at different games. I'm going to go down to St. Louis with Frank. It's just a great tournament. I mean, amateur team, Christos playing DC United tonight. there's just a lot to love about a tournament where everyone can enter and everyone can play.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Well, we'll see exactly what the Chicago Fire do. They've won it 4 times. They'd like to make it a 5th as they take on St. Louis FC on Wednesday night down in Fenton, Missouri. We come back, we'll take a closer look at exactly what the Fire are doing and how they get ready to prepare for the New England Revolution this weekend. A Saturday contest as the Chicago Fire head down to take on New England. It'll be a 6:30 start on CSN, 6 o'clock pregame. We're talking about it. We come back. Don't forget also, Saturday, June 24th, Chicago Fire return home. A game presented by Heineken, Orlando City SC in town, a 7:30 start. Get your tickets at chicago-fire.com/tickets. Back after this, Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
The blades of a combat chopper spin at 380 RPMs. Not even close to an Echo trimmer. Now that's shock and awe. Power on and on.
We don't give up. We don't quit. We keep going. Day in, day out. We fight on. Why? Because we are champions. Be a champion.
Don't let pain knock you out of the ring. Our hand, wrist, and elbow experts are pioneers worldwide. You need us in your corner. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today. After our minimally invasive spine surgery, 80% of golfers maintained or improved their handicap. Be treated by the pros to play more like a pro. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today.
Than the winds of a Cat 5 hurricane? An Echo backpack blower. So, yeah, it'll clear a path. Power on and on.
It's time for Fire Field Vision, powered by NovaCare, as we take a look at the Chicago Fire. A couple of games this week, the U.S. Open Cup game, and then also they get ready for the New England Revolution this Saturday in New England. They're playing on turf. They have not done that in a while. Bastian Schweinsteiger will be the first time for him since he's come to the Chicago Fire playing on turf. And New England is one of those teams in the previous segment, Frank, you bring up about the Fire. They've not really had one of those bad periods since they've hit this stretch. Well, New England, they just come off a win as they knocked off TFC 3-0. So they've got to be a little jacked up when they as they get ready for this game.
A little bit different than from the last time that they played here. Obviously, things change with Watson getting that early red card in the game. But it might be a good thing that the Open Cup is on turf, because then you get used to it. You have both games on turf. But yeah, it's going to be a different game, because I think you bring Kofi's back. With New England, and I think the thing that they've done better when he plays centrally, whether it's Kawasi or Caldwell, I think that gives them a little bit more stability, Paul, in the back, because with the front four that they have, if it's Fagundes, if it's Rowe, if it's Wynn, Kamara, I think they have more of a freedom now attacking wise, and then I think, where before when you had only one holding guy in Kawasi, it was a lot for him to cover a lot of space, I think with both those guys, if Kawasi's back playing or Caldwell, or two holding midfielders, I think that those front four have more of an ability to take a little bit more risk going forward, knowing that they have at least 6 guys that are going to cover a lot of ground for them.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, one thing about Gershon Kofi is he may be one of the more underrated defensive midfielders in this league. He's very smart in his ability to break things up, to intercept the ball, close down passing lanes, but also to get stuck in at the right moment, shut down a counterattack when it needs. And now he's with another player in Kawasi who's able to cover a lot of ground. So you're basically splitting the field in half between two very athletic, very dynamic defensive midfielders. And like you said, all of a sudden now, a little bit, especially less defensive responsibility for someone like Lee Nguyen. And I think that's why we've seen his numbers going up. When he's at his best, when he can float around the field and play make, and he really has been good. And I would also say, we talk about home field advantage. It's difficult. New England's very good at home. Why? Well, there's a couple factors. One, that turf field is terrible to play on.
The guys are shooting the muskets off. You get afraid of that?
But on a serious note, the atmosphere there is not good, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge cavernous stadium. You're far away from the fans. There's not a lot of them. And so it's hard to get up, to ramp up for the game because the atmosphere is so kind of low. And so it can be almost a trap game in a way. So that's difficult for teams to overcome, and I think the Fire need to make sure that they're up for this game.
Yeah, and I think that the turf that's there, every turf is a little bit different.
Right.
I felt that the turf field there is a little bit heavier because of the amount of pebbles that they put in. I think it almost feels like you're playing in sand. So it takes a little bit of time to adjust. You got to put more pace in your passing. But the one thing that the Fire have done well, their ability to overload centrally, and then at the right time, get the wide backs, whether it's Polster or Vincent or whoever, get them wide and create overloads in the right moment. I think that's going to put a lot of pressure still on the outside back because if the two holding guys are going to go out wide to cover, I think the Fire do a very good job recognizing it and then playing quickly centrally where the space is going to be.
Well, Frank, I really loved this matchup when New England played a diamond midfield because if you overload centrally, you're isolating 1v1 on the wings with the fullbacks. And the fullback play has been a bit of a weakness for New England. They've been rotating guys. Obviously, Watson, to me, not a great player, and we saw what happens when you expose him 1v1. Now, if you're playing 4-2-3-1 with two defensive midfielders, if you can keep those two guys sucked in central, you can still create those 1v1 matchups against the fullback, and that's ideal. The Fire have done that very effectively this season. Like you're saying, Frank, that's got to be the goal against this team. It's going to mean Matt Polster is going to do a lot of running in this game. Brandon Vincent's going to do a lot of running, but I think it's the right way to play, even if it means at times you sacrifice David Accam in space.
We have some highlights to take a look at, some of the things the Fire did and maybe can do this weekend.
Yeah, we look at the last game. There's only 3 clips, and then obviously if we go to the video here, the one thing early on they did at Atlanta, their ability to play quick, and you see Schweinsteiger here, very good job by Vincent to provide that width. With one switch of play, I think, he goes down and it just delivers a great ball into the box here early on for Nikolic, who turns and it just hits that outside of the post, and, transition, Paul, we talk about this all the time, how dangerous they are.
This is what David Accam does to change the game. Probably should have played that ball a little bit earlier, but when he's on the field, they are able to break out, and teams have to respect that.
And then just this great recognition by Polster. You see that he sees the space, he's moving, the ball, good combination play to play him through. And then that was one opportunity in the second half because they had 2 or 3, that they could have put the game away. But I think their ability to play quick out of tight spaces, which they did very well against Atlanta because they like to counter-press, I think that's also very good on the road. I think their ability to combine. And then if you play, when you're playing on the road, you can sit a little bit more back, because then the home team is going to press, the space in depth and the pace that the Fire have can come in handy.
I'll be interested to see who plays central because we've seen rotation there between Solignac and Deleu, who's in the middle, who's out wide right. And we saw when you want somebody to occupy a defensive midfielder, Deleu is a better choice. He almost man-marked Alonso against Seattle. Alonso is a little bit more on the ball than either Kouassi and Kofi for New England. He dictates more what they do, and that's why you put him. But if you have a player like Deleu who's able to get on the ball early on and get stuck in a little bit against guys like Kofi and Kouassi, I think he causes more problems there. And I wouldn't be shocked to see that be an early assignment for Michael Deleu, is to buzz around those two guys, make sure they know that you're there the entire time, and then allow Solignac and Accam to get on the ball a little bit more as they tuck in.
That's a look at Fire Field Vision, powered by NovaCare. The Chicago Fire taking on the New England Revolution this weekend. And don't forget, the Chicago Fire then returning home next Saturday as they take on Orlando City SC, a 7:30 start. Game presented by Heineken. Get your tickets at chicago-fire.com/tickets. Heck, you can head on out to New England if you can get out there, catch the game Saturday. If not, it's on CSN 6:30 start, 6 o'clock pregame with Dan Kelly and Frank Klopas. We come back, we'll talk a little bit more about New England. Don't forget, we'll still be talking about the U.S. men's national team. A big week last week. We'll discuss it all. It's Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
Go inside the lives of Chicago's biggest sports stars, only on Inside Look, presented by Cadillac. Your questions answered.
They got this big because basketball got this big.
Idols revisited.
They bring the atmosphere and the energy that you need throughout the grind of the season.
And the stories behind the headlines revealed.
It's a special journey and it's a great story.
Catch a new interview every month with Inside Look on CSN. Visit csnchicago.com for listings.
You dream your whole life about being drafted. When you walk up on stage and shake the commissioner's hand, that's the first thing he says to you is welcome to the NHL. It's amazing when it finally happens.
And the winner is
Patrick Kane. Shot, score!
Little did I know I'd be coming to such a great city like Chicago, and I think it's amazing how it's worked out.
CSN and Blue Man Group are giving 5 lucky fans a chance to hang out in Wrigleyville all day long. Catch the Northsiders during the day, grab some dinner, then see a Blue Man Group performance at night. Enter today at csnchicago.com/Blue Man Group.
Baseball is back in Chicago, and Wrigleyville Sports has everything you need to cheer on the reigning World Series champs. Browse our massive selection of brand new hats, t-shirts, and souvenirs. Rock the same jersey as your favorite player, or let us customize one for you. And there's still time to get your hands on World Series champions gear. Whether you're on your way to the bleachers or cheering from home, Wrigleyville Sports is your one-stop shop for everything Cubs. Come see us at 959 West Addison, across the street from Wrigley Field, open 7 days a week, and 24/7 on WrigleyvilleSports.com.
Save big on great Father's Day gifts at Bass Pro Shops, like Redhead 8-pocket shorts for under $15. Mr. Steak Patio Grill starting at under $350. Plus free catch and release ponds and giveaways this weekend.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. Time for the Valspar Primer, brought to you by Valspar, the official paint of your Chicago Fire. The Fire with the U.S. Open Cup match coming up on Wednesday in St. Louis. Then they battled the New England Revolution this coming Saturday, a game you can see on CSN at 6:30. 6 o'clock pregame with Dan Kelly and Frank Klopas. Dan likes when I mention his name, so I had to make sure I get it in a couple times. Now, Frank, one guy, every time the Chicago Fire play New England, there's one guy who's always a key, one way or another, and that's Lee Wynn in midfield for New England.
Well, he's been the key for him so far in the season. I mean, 6 goals, 7 assists, and, I think the one adjustment they've made is that, you bring another guy centrally that can cover for him defensively, because if you expect him, first of all, he's not going to track all the time. So I think if you can free him up, and give him the ability now, find him in the final third. He's very good at getting, finding that space between the lines where he can get the ball and turn and run at you in the final third. He's very good at combining. He's very good in tight spaces, and he can finish. And that's the one thing that we've seen from him. So definitely he's one guy that wherever he's on the field, that there's got to be like a red marker. You got to say, you got to zone in on this guy. You can never get too stretched out where he can get the ball and run at you.
And I think the responsibility in this game is going to fall to one of Lee Wynn's good friends, Dax McCarty, to try to take his buddy out of the game. It's going to be a really good matchup to watch. But, what strikes me about New England is they've been on the cusp, it feels like, the last few seasons. And it's been kind of a weird dynamic because they're rotating between this 4-4-2 diamond and a 4-2-3-1. And the problem is defensively they're not good enough really to play the diamond. I mean, they got hot last year playing it, and they thought that would be, but the balance is wrong. And so you see them bring in another central midfielder. Well, what's the back end of that? That means you move Juan Agudelo, who was playing so well as a forward earlier this year, out to the wing because you got Kai Kamara, and now you're questioning, do we play Kellen Rowe? Who do we play where? And for me, there has to be a decision that's made in New England at some point, which is either A, to trade one of these assets in the final third for some defensive help, or else to settle on a system and say, okay, you know what, Juan, you're going to be a winger. We've got Kai up top. Kellen Rowe, you're going to be our left winger. We're going to play Chris Tierney at left back. He's our best left. Instead of trying to find your best 11 players and say, all right, Kellen, we're going to play you at left back just to get you on the field. Make a decision, play a formation, even if it means putting a good player on the bench.
Well, and I think they made the change last year, Paul, because they were losing and the pressure was then. You have Agudelo and Kamara. How can you get them both on the field? And that's not the point. What's the best for the team? And if you look at this year, I mean, Agudelo has 7 goals coming off the bench, and Kamara has been playing with 4 goals. So I think for me, the difference has been, I think they've stabilized a little bit the team defensively with the ability to play more like they used to in the old days, that 4-2-3-1, where you really have 2 defensive-minded midfielders that are going to cover a lot of ground, not only centrally, but have the ability to cover those wide areas. Because when you have a guy like Fagundes, Wynn, Kamara, and even Ero, those guys are not going to defend. Right. They're soft. They're not going to get stuck in. They're not like Michael Duluth that's going to track, if you tell them 90 minutes up and down, like Solinak. They're not going to do that work. They're not going to track back and also give you what they do going forward. So when you're playing with, 2 holding midfielders, and you can free those guys to have a little bit more of the space to win the ball and save them opportunity to run 80 yards, or you got to press higher up the field, because then they can press. They can come back all the way to the halfway line.
You mentioned the name that I was going to bring up, and it's a name that I think a lot of soccer fans have been waiting for him to step out, probably New England Revolution too, but Diego Fagundes, I mean, he's been around forever. He's still, 22, if that?
Yeah, he's a really young player, and he's a very good player. When you give Diego Fagundes the responsibility to be a little bit of a playmaker from a wide spot, he likes to pinch in and combine. He's a very quality player. I think they are a better team when he is on the field, and that's been the dilemma with Kellen Rowe. But, yeah, I think he's still kind of never peaked beyond where he's been, right? He's never taken it to the next level. But at the same time, Frank, you can speak to this. When you're on the field sometimes with guys like Lee Nguyen, you defer a little bit. I mean, it's Lee Nguyen's team, and I think there's some of that dynamic going on.
But my point is, if you play Lee Nguyen, he's a guy that looks to combine. He looks to play inside. So Fagundes makes a lot of sense. Kellen Rowe makes a lot of sense because they're good players and look to combine. If you're playing with Kai Kamara, yes, he's a big target guy, but then you get him no service, especially you talked about it. If you have a left back like Tierney, maybe he's not the fastest guy defensively, but he's one of the best crossers of the ball, and that's what this guy Kamara needs. And if he doesn't get that, you see him in games where he drifts all the way to the right-hand channel to get the ball, or he comes back. That's not where you need a guy 6'3", 6'4". He's a big target guy. He's got pace to get behind, but he needs service to be successful. So, I mean, I agree with you. It's like, what's the best way to play for them? I think it'll be interesting to see how they line up against Saturday. It's still a difficult place to play there, but I think that the Fire right now, they're going in there, in a very good moment.
There's so many different types of strengths on this team. Now they're solid defensively in the middle of the field. They've got skillful players who like to combine. They've got a striker who's best with crosses. They have to make a decision about what they are as a team. But I know Mike Burns has a reputation in the league of being very difficult to deal with in trades. But if I'm a GM in MLS, I'm calling him and I'm asking about Kellen Rowe and I'm asking about Juan Agudelo, because at some point they're going to have to make a decision.
The other matchup I love seeing over here is Farrell against David Accam, because you got 2 speedsters going at it. And I think that, every time they play against each other, you can see Farrell, his limited ability to get forward. And this is one of what they rely on, both the outside backs to provide that service for Kamara. But I always look for that matchup and looking forward to see them again this Saturday.
After this Saturday in New England, the Chicago Fire come back home and they take on Orlando City SC on the 24th, a game presented by Heineken. Get your tickets, chicago-fire.com. We come back, we'll talk about the U.S. men's national team, Trinidad and Tobago, also the trip down to Mexico. We'll discuss it. It's Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
What's more powerful than the winds of a Cat 5 hurricane? An Echo backpack blower. So, yeah, it'll clear a path. Power on and on.
John, you're home.
What's going on?
It's this paint, Valspar Reserve. Nothing stays on the wall. Not anything. Not any of these things, John.
Right, Valspar Reserve. Super stain resistant and scrubbable.
And this color, still perfect.
Yeah, looks great, Val. How much coffee have you had?
3 cups. 4.
Valspar Reserve Paint and Primer with Hydrochroma technology. Now the colors you love stay the colors you love. Exclusively at Lowe's.
Find a location near you at chicago-fire.com/youth.
If you have recently suffered an injury or had surgery, let the experts at NovaCare Rehabilitation get you back to an active lifestyle. Our comprehensive programs deliver the highest level of physical therapy, hand therapy, sports medicine, and work health rehabilitation. Our highly skilled therapists develop individualized treatment plans to exceed your expectations. So, don't live in pain. To request an appointment today, visit NovaCare.com. NovaCare, the power of physical therapy.
The blades of a combat chopper spin at 380 RPMs. Not even close to an echo trimmer. Now that's shock and awe. Power on and on.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by the Private Bank. Fred Hubner and Paul Tenorio, Frank Lopez. We've talked about the Fire. They've got their U.S. Open Cup game on Wednesday. They play the New England Revolution on a Saturday. Let's talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team. It was a big week for them. They play Trinidad and Tobago. They play down in Mexico. And we talked last week that the Trinidad game was very, very important because you wanted to get points because you didn't know what you were going to get out of Mexico. They got points. Thank goodness for Christian Pulisic. Nice having a kid like him on your team, isn't it?
No, definitely. But there was never a doubt in my mind against Trinidad and Tobago. And I think this all comes down to, having a coach that's prepared the team the right way. There's a plan going in even before the Trinidad game.
Mm-hmm.
You have a practice game before, trying to already acclimate to altitude. I think Trinidad and Tobago, yes, Pulisic was fantastic, but you saw the plan going in. Some different players playing in that game, and then obviously, you wanted to get that result, obviously, in Mexico, because for me, it's a big rivalry. 1 point, and it's a huge point for the team. But I think walking away 4 points out of the 2 matches, I think was a fantastic result.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. I mean, Pulisic, he's the man everyone's looking at, the young man that everyone's looking at. But they go down to Mexico then after that, okay? And 7 changes from Bruce Arena. Now, I think there were a lot of soccer fans that were freaking out a little bit. 7 changes. Who are these guys that are coming in? He had this all planned out. He knew what he was going to do, especially probably after the win over against Trinidad and Tobago. He knew what he was going to do, and it all worked, and it seems like he's got these players believing in him.
Well, I think it's fair to say that had Jurgen Klinsmann made a radical lineup change like that, he would have been roasted pregame, and you didn't really see that much with Bruce Arena. And I wrote about this for 442. I said, well, the difference is that Bruce has earned the trust of the fans and of the media and mostly of the players, because he does make changes like this that are unexpected, but usually they're successful. We saw that at the 2002 World Cup. We saw it with the LA Galaxy. He came in, and this is a big, big factor. When the U.S. lost to Mexico in Columbus, they came out with a 3-man back line, and everything I heard from sources after the game was that the lineup was a surprise to some of the players, that they only had 1 or 2 days of preparing at that lineup, and they weren't even sure that they were going to play it until they got to the stadium. First day of camp with this team, Bruce Arena told them, we're going to play a 4-4-2 against Trinidad, and we're going to play a 3-5-2 against Mexico, and we're going to make up to 9 changes in this game because there's only 3 days rest,
right,
and you're going at 7,500 feet in Mexico City. That amount of preparation makes a difference at this level. If you're training together, if you understand the ideas of the formation, that is what makes tactics isn't just throwing guys out there in a different formation. It's ideas for how those formations take strengths away from the other team and provide strengths for your team. And that was the difference between Mexico in November, a 2-1 loss, and Mexico in Azteca last week, and a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, but Paul, you said one important word, successful, because I think you're right. I do agree with you 100%, but I think that, if you don't get a result there and you make 7 changes, then, everyone,
right,
you leave it, everyone is going to say whatever they're going to say, but I do agree with you. I think everything, when you plan the right way and you communicate things and you prepare the right way, results will come.
You guys have seen many great goals. The goal from Michael Bradley. I mean, not only well placed, but just with the knowledge that you could see on the replay, he looked up. He intercepted the ball. He looked up. He knew the keeper was off the line, and it was a perfect chip.
That for me, if you're talking about like big moments, big goals and stuff like that, I go back to Paul Caligiuri scoring, the big goal against Trinidad and Tobago to qualify the U.S. And I mean, I'm not putting this goal, that kind of importance into a game because it wasn't.
Right.
But for me, Caligiuri's goal was incredible, top 90 in a crucial moment. And then, Michael Bradley for me, man, if he was anywhere else in the world, they'd be playing this every day. If Ronaldo scored this goal, I'd be hearing about it for months. It was like one of the best goals that I've ever seen.
And it goes, I think it also speaks, people ask me about Michael Bradley all the time. It also speaks to preparation from Michael Bradley. He said after the game 2 things. One, they had watched film on Mexico and seen pattern movement, which coaches work on in training all the time. And one of their patterns was Chicharito dropping back and a midfielder making the run into space. The way we saw Polster in the clip last segment, making run into space, and it's a one-time pass to allow him running full speed into space. So Bradley checked with Chicharito, but to the outside of him to intercept that pass. And then the second thing was he knew that they're playing in Mexico City in altitude. The ball flies a little bit more, so he put a little bit less on his chip because he knew it would carry. Perfectly weighted goal, fantastic. It goes up there. You're right, Caligiuri probably up there, number 1. Landon Donovan against Algeria to advance in the World Cup is up there as well. But in Azteca in a World Cup qualifier, that's a pretty darn big goal.
I saw in our first World Cup game in '94, Switzerland, when Aldo scored a free kick. Now the more I think there's been some great goals, but to do it against Mexico, altitude in a crucial game like that, and Paul was right, and you're Fred. He wins the ball, head is up, and then to be able to chip that 40-45 yards.
Yeah. If you think about it too, it's big for Michael Bradley because if you remember the World Cup, they weren't sure. Everybody was out. Where is he supposed to play? Is he supposed to be back? He's supposed to be the attacking midfielder, the defensive guy. It seems like right now they know what they're doing with him, and a lot of that has to do with Bruce Arena.
Yeah, he's the number 6, and they've decided that with Toronto and on the national team. It's unfortunate Dax McCarty is fighting for a spot there, but Michael Bradley's pretty solidly cemented in that spot. But you look at the changes they made over this run of games, and I think we saw some players who are capable of being a big part of this cycle 1 year out from the World Cup. Kellen Acosta stepped in at the number 8 role and was fantastic at 21 years old, and I think he supplanted Jermaine Jones as the starter moving forward when they play with 2 defensive midfielders. Obviously, Christian Pulisic as the number 10 is going to be the way going forward. But you also look at center back. There's a big competition going on right now. Tim Ream, I thought, was very good. Omar Gonzalez, John Brooks, Jeff Cameron. That's 4 center backs capable of starting.
I also like the guy Hedges, though, from Dallas. Yeah. I know he was there, didn't play for me. I saw him against here with the Fire, and his ability to stay tremendous. With the speedster comp that we have, for me, he's another guy that was fantastic.
When we come back, we'll talk more about the summer of soccer. We've got U.S. Open Cup. We also have a Gold Cup. We have Confederations Cup getting started this weekend. And we'll talk about Major League Soccer. The Chicago Fire in New England this weekend. Catch it 6:30 on CSN, 6 o'clock pregame. Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.
Hi, Russ for U.S. Waterproofing. Looking for a company to repair your home can be stressful. Look to us, as many of your neighbors have, like Mrs. O'Brien in Elmhurst. We sealed cracks in her crawl space. Or Mr. Weber in Orland Park. We installed a battery backup sump pump. And Mr. Kaplan in Northbrook. He needed structural repair after he noticed cracks in his brickwork. We've helped many of your neighbors.
Schedule your free consultation today at uswaterproofing.com. U.S. Waterproofing. A better basement starts with us.
Hey, bud, you need some help?
No, I'm good. Come on, Mom. I have to go.
We always trusted our Subaru Impreza would be there for him someday.
Hey, that's it.
We just didn't think someday would come so fast.
See you later, Mom.
Introducing the Subaru Impreza, the longest-lasting vehicle in its class. More than a car, it's a Subaru.
From Lethbridge.
I heard my name.
Brent Seabrook.
It's almost like you black out, like you don't really remember much, and then remembering from the videos and the clips that you see after. It was unbelievable to be selected by the Hawks and join the organization for sure.
Go inside the lives of Chicago's biggest sports stars, only on Inside Look, presented by Cadillac. Your questions answered.
They got this big because basketball got this big.
Idols revisited.
They bring the atmosphere and the energy that you need throughout the grind of a season.
And the stories behind the headlines revealed.
It's a special journey and it's a great story.
Catch a new interview every month with Inside Look on CSN. Visit csnchicago.com for listings.
Welcome back in Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. I talked about the summer of soccer, the Gold Cup, also Confederations Cup getting started this weekend. It's kind of a warm-up for Russia as they have 8 teams coming, and they start on Saturday. But also, don't forget, August 2nd at Soldier Field, it's the Major League Soccer All-Stars taking on Real Madrid. And you can vote. Go to MLSsoccer.com or Chicago-Fire.com. You can vote for your Chicago Fire players to get to the MLS All-Star squad. It'll be coached by Veljko Paunovic. Go to Chicago-Fire.com/All-Star right now. Nemanja Nikolic, number 1 among forwards, and Bastian Schweinsteiger, number 2 in the midfield. And because Pano's the coach, I'd fill it up with some Fire players.
Well, look, I had to do an all-star team for 4-4-2. It was much tougher than I imagined it would be to pick that team, to be honest. But I look at it, and I think that both Dax McCarty and David Accam are deserving of being all-stars, even if it means that there are 4 Chicago Fire players on the all-star team. Look, they're in second place in MLS right now. I don't think that's not deserving. And you look at what David Accam has done this season, numbers-wise, it justifies it. By the way, winger this year in MLS, very difficult position David Accam's in to get in the All-Star game. Romain Alessandrini, Miguel Almiron, Justin Merrim has put up great numbers with Columbus. A lot of good options at that position, but I think David Accam's right up there.
Yeah, I don't think there's much doubt, and it'd be nice to see people can get out and vote, Chicago-Fire.com. And the way David Accam has played, especially with his combinations with Nemanja Nikolic. And Nico right now, as we said, number 1 with forwards, and it'd be nice to see Accam out there too.
Listen, I mean, look, we watch a lot of games, and then I think he's I'm not going to say the one player, because when you look at Justin Merrim that Paul talked about, he's another guy, not the same kind of pace, but he's a player also that he can create things out of nothing on his own. You know, he doesn't need that kind of service from other players, and, you know, you see the impact that Accam has had every game, his ability with pace, his ability with the ball to run, to get his setup. We talked about his progression, how he's evolved as a player. And I do agree with Paul. I mean, I really, even if you do have 4 players coming in, I think this guy, as you never know, at that time the team could be in first place. You know, I think McCarty deserves to be there, my opinion, you know, and so does Accam.
Yeah, the Chicago Fire, they are gearing up for not only the All-Star game, but you've got Gold Cup. Now, Dax did not play in the other 2 games, but Gold Cup, you would think he'd get called up for that and possibly play some games too.
That's a tournament where Bruce Arena is going to get some guys into the team who haven't been playing, try out some new faces. I think you'll see Dax McCarty play a big role in that tournament, in that number 6 role, allow Michael Bradley to stay with the club and get some rest, maybe bring him in later in the tournament.
Yeah, and you see some other places that maybe it's an opportunity to win a spot in the national team roster through that tournament. So, you know, some guys getting fit and some other, guys first look, maybe an opportunity to break through.
Chicago Fire with a big week as they have the U.S. Open Cup match in St. Louis on Wednesday, then in New England on Saturday, 6:30 on CSN, 6 o'clock pregame on CSN. Dan Kelly, Frank Klopas. Thanks a lot for watching Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. This is what they need in innings like this, putting hits together.